Hi, everyone. I'm Kelly O'Horo, and this is Adaptable, Behavior Explained. Hi, everybody. Thank you so much for tuning in today to Adaptable. I am so excited to have you here today because we are going to discuss a topic that's really important, especially during the ages of our early 20s, and that's identity and how identity is shaped based on our experiences and societal expectations and all of those things that go into how do I see myself in the world and how am I shaped as a person. And I'm really excited to have our guest today. I've spoken about him on many other episodes. This is my youngest son. Collin O'Horo, and he is actually becoming a rapper, and his stage name is EMDRIA Crew. And so he's currently working on his first album, so I'm excited to support that. I'm excited to hear from Collin and how he sees his life experiences help shape who he is. So, EMDRIA, tell us a little bit about yourself.
I'll tell you what, I definitely have two people living in my head, depending on what situation I'm in, what circumstances I'm dealing with, whether or not I'm dealing with business or personal life. Being a rapper, I usually go by Crew. So let's try to not slip on Collin. I know it's a little hard. I came from you.
I know.
Quite literally.
We started with that for a long time. And I actually call you Parker because I wanted to name you Parker.
I go by many names.
I lost the battle on the naming. And so I always call you Parker. So yeah, we're just going to confuse it today for sure.
I'm down to get confused. I mean, I'm in my 20s. Like, what else are you going to do in your 20s?
You wake up confused.
Yeah, well, I grew up in a performing arts school right down the road. I originally started from martial arts, transitioned to dancing, went into hip hop, and overall just ended up evolving into rapping. Initially freestyling from shampoo bottles in the shower.
He was literally always singing growing up. Yeah. I mean, he woke up and he was talking or singing pretty much till he went to sleep.
I would sing down the halls and get bullied for it. And then I got good at rapping and no one bullied me anymore. And I think that's where my identity started to shift from someone that I viewed as maybe not as strong or confident, which would be Collin, and somebody that took the wheel, which would be Crew. EMDRIA stems from Aria, which is more of a feminine power, feminine lioness, kind of Karate Kid snake energy. And I ended up just getting Crew afterwards because it sounds cool and it rhymes with a lot of things.
It's also like shorter for a t-shirt.
And yeah, it is, right? You can get a cool font with Crew, maybe some X's at the end. But yeah, that's my background, and I took it from sales. I dropped out of college from a full ride. I was pretty confident in my ability to communicate and to sell and make a living doing that. And I just ended up being more interested in music. So I'm going to try selling EMDRIA Crew as a brand, which awesome. Is identity.
Right. It is an identity. And when you think about, developing that, and I really appreciate your candor in the I have two people living in my head, and because I think that really normalizes that we all have parts of ourselves.
Yeah,
and
100%.
And I think that it's important that we recognize, we do all have masks, we all shapeshift, we all do things to manage our perception or our identity. But when you think about coming into authenticity, that can be a challenge because what is authentic?
Especially with social media.
Right, yeah. Exactly. And we're going to talk about that for sure today. But thinking about just the broad picture of identity and how, when you're in your early 20s, you're leaving home, you've been out of home, you're adulting mostly, but there's still things that we want independence, but there's a reckoning with the dependence that you're still relying upon.
Life insurance doesn't end until 26.
health insurance.
Health
it's like there's all these pieces, right? And
hopefully
depending
not life insurance.
We might need life insurance based on some of your crazy daredevil sort of antics, but
Crew.
But when we think about identity formation, I really like that when you and I have rich conversation about how you navigate choices in life and who's on board when you're making those choices. When I say who's on board, I'm saying who's driving a certain decision in your life and how do you balance those things. I'm excited to have this conversation with you today.
Let's do it.
I think we can have a lot to offer, and I think being in your 20s is just hard all around. Especially today where there's so many different economic pressures, societal pressures, social media.
Family pressures.
Yes, societal pressures and expectations, just generally speaking, can just be burdensome. And so I appreciate you coming on and being willing to do this with me. So when you think about identity and your identity as you're coming into your changes, I can remember times when you've said to me, even as recently back as 18, like, I can't believe I did this or that when I was 18. That was so ridiculous. I'm so different now. So this will continue to evolve and change just based on the developmental age that you're in. So when you think about you and how you've grown in the last handful of years, what have you recently learned about yourself and your own identity?
I've learned it's not my job to convince people who I really am. I definitely struggled with my sense of identity because of the impact that I had on people and the reactions that they would give me, whether they were positive or negative, or just a lack of reaction at all. If there was someone, I like to use this metaphor, the social hierarchy, like social ladder. My whole life I've been trying to climb that, right? Like, I'm just from a small town, Gilbert, Arizona. I didn't really feel like I could impact the world to a degree. I mean, I have parents that have impacted their local community and the world to a degree, 23,000 subscribers, right? And you set the bar high. And so I always tried to fill that. And I never filled it through my passions and desires. It was always through everyone else's, mainly you guys. And then as I grew into college, my peers, the people I surrounded myself with. So recently I've realized that you're a reflection of the people you surround yourself with. And so I've just surrounded myself with better people, and I've struggled with my identity less. More confident people, more people that have their journeys, their paths, their structure in their life. It definitely rubs off on me in a positive way.
Yeah, that's smart. And that's really insightful, because we do really become who we surround ourselves with when we are. And it sounds like that is also more in alignment with what you are working toward in your own personal goals. And I always
which are Collin's goals.
Right. Yeah. So that's that amalgamation of things. But when I think about, even when I was a kid playing sports, we always would play up to the team. So if we played a team that was a lot better, we brought it. We brought our game. And so I think that really resonates to me for me as well, that, you surround yourself with good people if you want to become good people. That's
100%.
That's smart. And when you think about the evolution of self, are there parts of you that you're still trying to figure out, or do you feel pretty solid right here, right now for you?
I mean, I feel like it'd be ignorant to say I'm not trying to figure out anything else. I'm definitely confident with the decisions I've been making recently. The steps I'm trying to take as, a rapper, as, a performer in general, someone that's trying to be in front of camera. I'm just exploring those different avenues, and hopefully I can find better ways to do it, which would probably take Collin stepping up with some discipline. But Oriah Crew knows what he's doing, for sure.
Does he know too much?
Probably a little bit too much, but that's the whole thing that we can take it back a little bit of, I kind of need to know too much around these people because they know too much, right? And it's just stepping up.
Otherwise, that impostor syndrome would really probably eat your face, because we're constantly measuring against people. Right.
I'm a server at Olive Garden. Let's get real about it. I have a lot of professional experience with loans and people. I was a door knocker, and then I managed a small team for a little bit, and I just didn't love it. And that's not what I wanted to do. And I felt like I ran it. Mm-hmm. I didn't have any imposter syndrome.
Right.
But Oriah Crew, he's like...
So you borrow some confidence in moments where you might have otherwise questioned your validity and an experience.
Well, now I believe that I'm actually building confidence in others around me through my lack of desire for validation.
Yeah, that external validation can be, honestly... cement. I mean, we can really just get frozen in that need for it. And so learning to have that come from the inside, I think, is so incredibly important for any success, quite frankly, because we're going to get our butts kicked when we're in the arena trying things. And so that makes me think about, values, that all of us have to have values that we instill in order to just figure out our guideposts. How do we filter our choices? So can you tell us a little bit about your beliefs and values that have helped to guide you?
My beliefs and values that have helped to guide me. Authenticity and capability. Those are my two ones. If I didn't have those tattooed on me forever, I wouldn't know what to do, right? Like, Oriah Crew can be vulgar at times. He can be seen as maybe misogynistic. Collin is seen as empathetic, understanding. He can listen. He can provide space. He has a lot of capacity to deal with everyone. And I'm balancing merging those two identities together. So it's more of a public face that I can be proud of and everyone else can. But at the end of the day, I'm authentic, I'm real, and I know I'm capable to build a brand that is not only valid in all aspects of rap and music, but valid through society and can have a positive impact on the people around me.
When you think about what you talk about in your writing with your music, do the messages in your music match the values that you embody, or is that still part of like what you're working to integrate?
I definitely think it embodies the brand of music in general, right? Like we have artists that, you know, donate millions of dollars to, you know, charities and impact, you know, the youth at such a positive way. And then they talk about bitches and money. And it's like, you know, sometimes there's just different avenues of getting the impact you have. And unfortunately, that's my avenue. That's just what I'm good at. It's what I grew up around. It's the people that influenced me, and I enjoy it.
Right. I have to say, as a mom, it's been an interesting, like, internal, you know, I have this image.
Yeah,
I mean,
tell me more about that.
You know, you can hear he's well-spoken, he's charming, he's, you know, he's kind, he's great with children. You know, when you see as a parent, when I see those attributes in you, that's my guy. Like, that's the guy I like to hang out with and everything else. And it's interesting because, you know, Dad and I were driving out to a date the other night, and I was listening. I had just listened to one of your reels, and it was like, you know, I'm just like, why is he talking about these things? It's so vulgar, it's so disrespectful, it's so whatever. And then we do listen to hip hop, and I threw on 90s hip hop, and I threw on Snoop Dogg, and it was just like, it was the same. And I looked at Dad, and I go,
it's just the same.
I don't judge it when it's him because I don't embody those values. But when it's coming out of your baby's mouth, you're like, oh, why is he doing this? But I had a different level of understanding, and I'm working to integrate personally. How do I bring those things together? Because
it's really
who you are as a person.
You're not wrong. I'll tell you what, like, I struggled with putting that stuff out online forever, right? That's always what the digital footprint is, forever.
Right.
And I didn't want to be seen as vulgar or disrespectful towards women. And then I started seeing more podcasts and documentaries about how these big brands made it in music. Maybe not only rap, but, you know, even New Edition, and just looking at these people that have grown to be such icons in the history of music. Their podcasts reflect a different person on the inside. Right. And it's for the show. I'm trying to sell tickets, right? I'm not trying to prove that I'm a good guy.
Well, and if you have a good beat in the background, everybody's dancing, and nobody can even really necessarily hear the lyrics specifically.
They're trying to catch a collective energy, right? And I've learned how to build crowds of 100 people on the side of the road.
You've always been
on the side of the road. And you know, girls will walk by, and I will be very, very blatant about the intrusive thoughts I have about them. And they'll sit in the corner and they'll drop $20 in the bucket. And it's like, do you even know what I just said? Right. And they're not focused on that.
They were focused on the charisma and how they felt that the way you were looking at them and the beat that you are so naturally
or the cadence, and then I start singing, and then I like drop it back, and we get a little lower in the bass, and you bring crew out, and then you bring like that kind of smooth, more like JT vibe, and you know, like
you've always been, you know, multi-talented when it comes to just your genre of music. You know, it's not uncommon for me to walk in.
And as I develop my brand, my genre of music will change over time as well.
Sure.
You know.
Well, and I think just like anybody and anything anyone does, there's an evolution. And as, you know, as Collin and crew more integrate, and there's more confidence and like that level of selfness that is part of growing in all of us. You know, I imagine, you know, I don't know that I'll see, you know, that Will Smith thing where he never said a swear word, you know, necessarily, although
keep
now
your wife's name.
Right. But, you know, we see other sides of everyone.
Exactly.
Right?
You know, sometimes the show slips.
But that really hurt his image, because everyone had this picture of who he is as a person. And then we see this other side of him. And, you know, he's still dealing with crawling back from that, you know, one mistake. And I think that's also disingenuine when it comes to authenticity. I think, you know, we really need to show more of our whole selves.
And being cancelable in general is why I want to build a brand, because if you build a brand that's uncancelable, right? If you get away with saying more vulgar things and just being more of a performer, and then you detach your personal life, you can't really be canceled because people are like, that's just a character.
Right.
There's a lot of examples like that today.
Tosh does a lot of that.
Tosh, you know, Eminem, like.
So thinking about brand and image and, you know, the primary, it's a plus minus social media. We have to address that because it's also, you know, it's how we get known, but it's also really detrimental in that we can get sucked in and it can become too much of our identity. Our dopamine gets messed up. We have another show about that. So let's talk about that. And I want to know, how does social media change the way you view yourself, or maybe a little bit about the evolution of that topic for you?
Are we talking about in the past or present day?
Let's talk about now, but if there's a reflection from the past, I think go for it.
Present day, I have much more of a lock on my use of social media. I'm trying to look at it more as a railway system to my goals, right? I've completely cut out mindless scrolling. All of my algorithm is fairly tailored towards action sports and music. And I think that has helped me focus more on my goals as an individual and why I'm using social media, and not necessarily using it to dissociate from my current reality and get sucked into it, start comparing myself with those around me. There's a few examples of friends that I have that are making it, they're very successful now, and we started at the same spot. And I'm like, what did they do that I didn't? And I understand that they just did it longer. They cared less. They had better network around them that they used from their own social media.
Consistency and consistent posting. There's a lot of that.
Posting, maybe, you know, setting better boundaries around the people that you're surrounded by, right? Your first 5 people that you're closest to are going to be who you end up hanging out with. And I think that the people that I've met on social media have given me a false sense of, I guess you could say clout, for a better word, a false sense of validation in who I think I am. And so I've maybe spent time with people that weren't as real as I thought they were. But in the sense of social media in general, I think that I don't have the same struggles as I would say the majority of my peers do.
I've noticed, even as I overhear you at times, you're always listening to something about learning, like how to build a fish tank, or I'm just like, you're always learning something. And that, I think you get that from Dad. I mean, he's always learning something, and your natural disposition to want to just, you're curious.
Yeah, I'll
You've always
smoke a
been
bowl
curious.
and watch how black holes work.
Right.
And then I'll look at the equations behind it and not understand what's going on.
Right.
But at least I can convince myself it's better than just consuming mindless content.
Well, and if you're learning something, it's always better. I mean, we need to keep learning.
Trying to
keep
listen to smart people talk about things that I don't understand.
Sure.
And that's how I think social media should be used.
Right.
And that's how I think media in general should be used.
Can you think of a time where social media really influenced a decision that you made?
Yeah, 100%. I struggled with a lot of vanity. When I started doing TikTok, I got a couple videos that popped off, and I think I got 50,000 followers in a couple of months. And hindsight, that's really nothing, especially if you don't have a brand. It's really just validation. But at the time, I was like, I'm going to make it big. I'm going to drop out of college. I'm going to film content with my best friend. We're going to go travel out of our cars in California, and we're going to film content and post it. And the moment that I dropped out of college and I moved to my car in San Diego, we filmed everything we did, didn't edit a single video, didn't post anything. They're just archives in my camera roll. And I lost my traction, and then I started putting together tit for tat videos, and without any story, without any context, and my view count went down, and I felt really bad about myself. I started really focusing on how I looked a lot in the present day and without social media. And I was like, maybe if I try harder and I try different content, or I look prettier, then maybe I'll be more successful. And that led me down a very, very,
that's a dark hole.
Very dark hole.
And so much external validation, which is what it's designed for. I mean, the algorithms are literally for that. They 100%. Want to suck you in, and they want you to be driven by that algorithm, and it's how they're made.
And I totally was.
Yeah.
And I see it every day still.
It's hard. You have to have that insight.
I see it mainly
in
women.
So you were talking about it took you to a really dark place, and that, as being a child of now 2 counselors and not really...
Hold on. Run that back, cameras. I have 2 therapist parents.
So that comes.
You know what that means?
It's a lot of challenges that I'm sure you.
It's a lot of data.
Yeah, it's a lot of data that you may or may not want. Maybe this is the origination of Crew. You're like, I don't want any more of this balance and mental health.
About balance and mental health and empathy.
But so when you think about going through a dark place and being in that space, with the social media polls and things like that, can you tell us a little bit about how you manage or keep a check on your mental health? Because you are, going into an industry where external validation is literally.
There's a lot of drugs.
Right.
There's a lot of women. There's a lot of access.
Right.
And the party never stops.
Right.
And I fell into that a lot in Scottsdale, actually, hometown. I started getting into the promoting world, and it started slipping. And it's because I didn't have access to my hobbies, my normal hobbies, right? Like rapping was one of my hobbies. Now it's hopefully going to be my profession, but I have a lot of other ones. I snowboard, I surf, I sing as well. And at the end of the day, I love the outdoors. I love water. If it's frozen, if it's liquid, whatever it is, I want to be on top of a board on it. And that stuff usually keeps me in check,
right.
Like taking time alone or even with friends without substance and really tapping into to Collin's hobbies and not Ariah Crew's, right? And that's how I kind of separated out with my mental health. And I think I'm doing good.
Awesome. Yeah. Well, how do you know when it's not good? Like what are the signs that you see? Because I think this can help other people key in who haven't had 2 parents as counselors, drilling this into them their whole life. How do you know when your mental health is not in check? What happens for you?
Check out,
What's that look like?
Checking out to me is essentially get like sleeping in too late, right? Instead of watching 1 episode, I'm watching 3, right? I'm losing valuable hours of time, and then I'm more tired in the morning, and then, I'll skip on some of my responsibilities because we talked about it earlier, when you start to get into your early 20s, I'm about to be 23, my car's paid off, right? I have a place to live. I have a job, I have my structure, and you start to forget about things like filing your taxes or, cleaning your car or, maintenance on your car. Like the small things, admin work, setting up goals for the next week, right? That can start to slip by the wayside. And that's how I know that I start to fall into more of a performance of life as opposed to an active goal on what life should mean and the impact I want to have on those around me. Right?
That's awesome.
So I end up just getting into this performance mode where as long as people are laughing or smiling around me, then I'm good.
So that goes back to that external influence. It's like I'm going to go rely on that thing again, but it's just a Band-Aid on a broken ankle. It doesn't really work.
Band-Aid on a broken ankle is a perfect analogy, And I have a lot of people that are willing to put Band-Aids on my ankles. And so when you're a performer, I think that's what most artists in general struggle with, even, most 20-year-olds that have nothing to do with artistry, social media kind of turns everyone into some sort of fake persona that you feel like you have to keep up. Right. And I think that resonates with everyone, not even just me.
That's a great point. When you think about stress, I mean, we're all faced with stress and it's an inundation, and you're striving for a profession that is really, there's no guarantees. And there's no, if I do this, then this, right? I mean, right. There's a lot more uncertainty, and I'm sure that brings a certain amount of stress. There's no like, by this date, I should have this. Like, right. If you go a more traditional route for your career choices. So how do you handle stress? What do you do for management of stress?
Do you want an authentic answer?
I want, maybe Collin could answer.
Collin, Collin and Ariah Crew, I like to smoke. And I handle stress usually by sitting in a chair. It's pretty simple. I have this analogy. And I bought this chair. It's $150 on Amazon. It's the greatest thing I ever bought in my life. I made a TikTok about it. I'm sobbing. I'm on mushrooms during it. Like, it was a very, very pivotal moment for me. But the analogy is essentially this old man was sitting in front of me, and he was watching everyone on the beach. And I was sitting about 20 feet behind him watching the old man. And I was sitting there for an hour and a half going, what does that guy have that I don't have? Why is he so peaceful? And I just realized he had a chair. That was about it. And I started thinking about that, materializing, that data into a thesis that's basically like, he's not thinking about anything. He has his spot. No one's going to take that spot from him. He's probably spent a lot of time in that chair thinking about thinking about what other people are thinking through whatever is happening in his brain to the point where there's probably nothing really going on. He's just in a state of observation and presence. He was just present in the moment. And at the time, I needed a chair to do that. I would go to parties and I would bring out this little umbrella chair, I'd pull it up, and I sit down. People are like, who are you? Like, you have this spot, you're totally chill, you seem confident. I'm not confident. I'm sitting in this chair like, who are these people? What's going on? But I'm quiet and I'm just observing those thoughts, right? And that's how I deal with the stress. I sit down. If I'm stressed out, I sit down. I look at what's around me.
Just slow it down.
And I just slow it down.
That's awesome.
And then I end up forgetting what I was stressed about. And then people will come up and they're like,
well, you'll take in the present moment.
Dude, you're in a chair. That's so cool. Like, what the? Or they think I'm weird, but I don't care because they're not taking this spot from me.
Yeah. So with the pressures of, your current age and this profession that you're leaning toward, and you think about expectations of society, we all have them. We all end up with those expectations as part of the voice in our head. And I wonder for you, how do those expectations affect your life?
The expectations from what? The people around me?
I would
myself?
say more societally. Like if you look at,
oh my gosh.
peer influence, what does that do for you?
At this point, I've kind of tried to flip the script. I've tried to influence my peers. I would say the majority of my close friends know they can't influence me unless they're pouring a shot of tequila. Like I'm pretty set in my ways. You know this. You have an experience with this. You can probably speak on it more than I can because I just check out. I'm like, if someone's saying something I don't want to hear that I don't think applies to me, I'm like, next.
Defensive.
You could call it defensive, but then I'll go sit in my chair. It's hard to be defensive if you're in a chair, not saying anything.
Removing yourself from the emotional pull of not agreeing.
The emotional
with,
stress of rejection, the emotional stress of how I think they're perceiving me, and it may be an unhealthy adaptation, but it's definitely helping me, kind of block out the noise of society's expectation on who they think I should be. I'm a singer. And someone will hear me sing and they're like, you should sing instead of rap. And it's like, should I? You're not me. Like, why do you think that? Is it because I'm pretty and you expect that I fit that image better? Or like, I literally had someone the other day say, dance, monkey dance. Like society's expectations are not something I'm concerned about at this point. Like if I'm in a restaurant, I will put my feet on the table. I'm at a podcast. It's professional. And I just don't care. Like, who's going to judge that? They might think it's disrespectful, but they're not my audience.
Right. That's fair. And I think I run into that sometimes, too. I'm like, I don't want to eat by your feet. Can you put your feet down? And,
and I think
you're
it's
like,
up to the
I'll
person
set a boundary.
to
And I'm just like, okay, I have to set pretty simple boundaries. Like,
it's really simple. And that's the
well,
thing
but what I'm saying is I think people get stuck on that because why should I have to tell you not to put your feet by my food? That seems inconsiderate, so I think that's where we run into moments where, and that might not feel inconsiderate to you if I put my feet by your food, but
the majority of my friends will just put their feet up too. And
the majority of my friends will not put their feet by my food.
We're in different professions.
It's fair. That's fair. Have you ever felt pressured to be someone you're not?
Yeah. Usually in context of drugs, mainly in adolescence. As I've grown into a more talented individual, which I would like to say experienced actually, I've struggled with that less, but I wasn't always like this. I wasn't always good at snowboarding. I wasn't always good at surfing. I wasn't always good at rapping, right? And so feeling pressured to fit those groups that I always wanted to be a part of was really taxing on who Collin was and how I wanted to be authentic and capable, kind of mirroring those around me. to try to fit in. That's something everyone struggles with.
Right.
I don't care who you are.
Belonging is always an issue, especially at those young age, those formative years. It's everything.
Yeah.
It really is.
I definitely feel pressure to this day, but it's definitely not as severe, and it's usually in more of a professional setting. You know, like people that have more established businesses than I do, more established brands that make more money than me.
Sure.
They view me as someone that has the same potential, but maybe not the same drive, or maybe not the same, goal-driven life that they had. Mm-hmm. And so it's hard for me to sometimes be around that too much, because I'll start to be self-deprecating in my mind. Right. You know, I won't let them see it, because I want to continue to be around them, and they don't want people dragging them down. Sure. So I'm definitely there to uplift people like that, but I would probably say is not as genuine as what I'm thinking.
Right. You've always been someone who, my experience of you has always been someone who's genuinely inclusive, though. If you saw someone sitting by themselves, you would be the first to go up and check in and see how they were, even if they weren't part of, your social group. And that's one of the traits that I've always found really admirable in you, is just genuine, you're very non-judgmental, and you're very inclusive. I'm grateful
that you said that, but I wouldn't necessarily say that as true anymore. I feel as if instead of trying to draw them in through personal contact and connection, I try to draw them in through building a crowd, right? Because people like that feel more comfortable in a crowd. And if they don't, it's not my market, unfortunately.
I think I was just talking more about who you are as a person, as someone who's kind and inclusive. Yeah. I hear how it's showing up in the right.
I'm never, putting anyone down, unless it's obviously, ironic or some sort of joke. But I definitely am not as driven to make sure everyone feels included.
That's not, the motivation isn't so codependent at this point.
Yeah.
Right.
Honestly. Yeah. Album Codependency coming out soon.
Yeah. So, well, we have more to talk about, several other topics, but we're going to have to make that a second show. So for those of you who are enjoying this conversation, tune in for the second episode of this topic on identity. Collin, thank you so much for being on this show with me. For those who don't catch the next episode, I just want to give you accolades for showing up and being flexible and patient with this process. And I really appreciate the words of wisdom that I think you're going to be able to offer those in your same age, and just the challenges that come with this part of development. And I appreciate your authenticity with that. And so in the meantime, don't forget to lead with love. It'll never steer you wrong.